It speaks to the fact that it's a three-pronged strategy, one built on international partnerships, supporting Canadian solutions and know-how, and building up domestic biomanufacturing capacity. And by working with private sector partners, the NRC will expand the production capacity here at Royalmount to up to 2 million vaccine doses a month by the end of next summer. Avec cet investissement,
with this investment, Canada will be guaranteed a domestic source of the vaccine. The NRC is working with the private sector to expand its production capacity at the Royalmount Centre. It will be able to produce up to 2 million doses per month by the end of next summer.
Builds on work already underway here in Montreal. At the start of the pandemic, our government invested $44 million in the NRC to help upgrade its existing research facility here at Royalmount to be compliant with the global standards in vaccine manufacturing. That investment is already paying dividends, as the NRC facility here at Royalmount is now on track to produce 250,000 vaccine doses per month starting this fall. I want to thank the National Research Council, Canadian firms working to develop vaccines and therapies, and our research community who continue to put in the hard work needed to help us to get through this crisis. Merci. Je vais maintenant passer la parole au Premier Ministre Justin Trudeau.
To the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. Je suis très heureux d'être ici au Conseil national de recherche en compagnie du Ministre Baines,
with Minister Baines and my colleagues, members of Parliament from Montreal, Minister Joly, Rachel Bendayan, and our local MP, Anthony Housefather. The chair of the National Research Council, Ian Stewart, is also with us today. Right from the beginning, our government has been fighting COVID-19 by being guided by science. We have invested more than $1 billion in a COVID-19 response strategy to increase testing and support clinical trials as well as vaccine-related research. If we want to protect Canadians, we must listen to the advice of public health experts and support scientific research, which means that we must also support our researchers as they develop an effective vaccine. Earlier this month, Minister Baines and Minister Anand announced the vaccine task force members. That task force includes specialists in immunology and vaccine development, but also industry leaders. Based on their advice, we signed agreements with Pfizer and Moderna to reserve millions of doses of a future vaccine against COVID-19. And today, we are moving forward again. I am announcing that the Government of Canada has signed 2 new agreements with Novavax and Johnson & Johnson to reserve millions of doses of the vaccine against COVID-19 that they are currently developing. Their most recent trials have yielded promising results, and if one of these vaccines passes the test, today's agreement will ensure that Canadians have access to the necessary doses. All our agreements with Pfizer, Moderna, Novavax, and Johnson & Johnson regarding a new vaccine will allow Canada to have access to at least 88 million doses, as well as options for tens of millions more doses. Minister Anand and Minister Haidu will have additional details to provide later on.
I can announce that the Government of Canada has signed 2 new agreements with Novavax and Johnson & Johnson to reserve millions of doses of the vaccines they're developing. Their most recent vaccine tests show promising results. That's why we're making sure that if one of these potential vaccines is successful, Canada and Canadians will have access to the doses they need. Taken together, our vaccine agreements with Pfizer, Moderna, Novavax, and Johnson & Johnson will give Canada at least 88 million doses, with options to attain tens of millions more. I know that Minister Anand and Minister Haidu will have more details to share at the noon briefing today. In the weeks and months ahead, our government will continue to take the steps needed to make sure Canada gets a COVID-19 vaccine as soon as possible. Once a vaccine is proven to work, we'll also need to be able to produce and distribute it here at home. On that front, I can also announce that we're investing over $126 million to expand the biomanufacturing facility right here at the National Research Council Royal Mount. This funding will increase this facility's ability to manufacture vaccines and will strengthen the NRC's partnerships with vaccine developers. We expect the facility to be up and running by mid-2021. Over
the next weeks and months, our government will continue to work hard to ensure that Canada has a vaccine against COVID-19 as soon as possible. Once a vaccine has proven to be effective, we will also be in a position to manufacture it and distribute it right here in Canada. In that regard, I can also announce that we are investing more than $126 million in a new facility at the Human Health Therapeutics Research Center at NRC Royal Mount. That facility will be able to produce the vaccine and develop partnerships with vaccine developers. That facility should be available by the middle of 2021.
Tomorrow is the 40th anniversary of Terry Fox's Marathon of Hope. Terry's courage and persistence made him a true Canadian hero and gave hope to people around the world. As we honor his legacy, let's continue to support the people and families affected by cancer and keep working together to find a cure.
I'd like to close by reminding Canadians that tomorrow is the 40th anniversary of Terry Fox's Marathon of Hope. Terry's courage and perseverance have made him a true Canadian hero and gave hope to people around the world. As we remember his legacy, let us continue to support people and families affected by cancer and all work together to find a cure. Thank you. And I'm now ready to take your questions.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, on va commencer la période de questions aujourd'hui avec les journalistes présents.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Philippe Bonneville, 98.5 FM à Montréal.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. With respect to the vaccine, we know that there are clinical trials that are progressing quite quickly and that there are promising results in some cases. Our American friends and Mr. Trump are saying they expect to have a vaccine available very, very soon. Now, based on the information that you're receiving from major experts here in Canada, what do you think? Do you think it is possible that a vaccine can be developed and be available before the end of 2020, or should Canadians just forget about that scenario? Well, certainly the best researchers and specialists in Canada and around the world are currently working very, very hard to develop a vaccine that will be effective and available as soon as possible. Now, our scientists have been saying for many months now that it could take years to develop a vaccine, but we also know that people are expediting their investments in vaccine development and trials, and that's exactly what we're doing as well. Certainly we can hope that a vaccine will be available soon, but we must ensure that it's the right vaccine and that it's a safe vaccine. And that's why, in fact, Canada is now signing these agreements with many different vaccine developers and many different companies in various regions to ensure that whatever vaccine is developed, Canadians will have access to the necessary number of doses.
It is obvious that researchers and scientists, the top Canadians and top people around the world are working extremely diligently and quickly to try and find a vaccine against COVID-19. We've heard from the beginning, many people warn us that vaccines can take, in many cases, years to develop. but obviously everyone is working as hard as they can to do it as quickly as possible. It is possible that there is a breakthrough soon that will allow us to get a vaccine more quickly, but we don't know where or if that breakthrough will come. That's why the Government of Canada has moved forward on signing agreements with a broad range of vaccine developers, of researchers around the world, so that regardless of who ends up developing the vaccine first, Canadians will have the opportunity to benefit from that vaccine. There's obviously a lot more work to go, as there are many, many different organizations and companies researching vaccines, but our focus is going to be on making sure that when a vaccine is developed, Canadians can have access to it as quickly as possible to get through and beyond this terrible virus.
Good morning, Morgan Lowry, Canadian Press. I was wondering what exactly China has said about why it couldn't honor the CanSino deal, and why would you have tried to do a vaccine partnership with a country that is holding two of our citizens hostage?
The CanSino partnership is a long-established partnership between Chinese researchers and Canadians that indeed resulted a few years ago in tremendous success in developing methods to counter Ebola. This was a well-established partnership well before COVID-19 that has been effective in the past, and we'd certainly hope that we'd be able to move forward and seeing it effective. Unfortunately, China didn't grant export permits for the vaccine to Canada, so we're continuing to focus on the many other paths that are very promising in terms of developing a vaccine. Le partenariat CanSino,
the CanSino partnership was very, very important in the past, particularly with respect to Ebola, and it was one of the options we were pursuing in our desire to diversify our options so that when a vaccine would be developed, Canada would have access to it. Now, of course, we were disappointed when China decided not to allow the vaccine, did not allow the research to be given to Canada, because they don't have the vaccine yet. It's still in development. But as you can see, we are now moving forward with different approaches to ensure that when a vaccine is developed, Canadians will have access to it.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Vanessa Lee with CTV News. Why did you prorogue Parliament when you continue to make major announcements that cost billions of dollars?
I think it is extremely important that when a government takes a new direction, that Parliament have an opportunity to support that. The throne speech we gave 8 months ago had no mention of COVID-19, had no mention of rebuilding an economy devastated and Canadians disrupted by a terrible global pandemic. So we will be putting forward an ambitious and responsible vision of how to build Canada back better, how to make sure that it is countering some of the vulnerabilities that COVID-19 has demonstrated, whether it's inequities within our systems, whether it's the challenge of going greener, whether it's a challenge of fairness or of efficiency and growth. These are things that we're going to tackle with an ambitious agenda for our new Parliament. But as we take a new direction, I think it is extremely important in a democracy that parliamentarians be able to pronounce on it. Particularly in a minority government situation, we shouldn't be moving forward with an ambitious, bold vision to help Canadians and build a better future without ensuring that we have the support of Parliament. And that's why prorogation and a throne speech allows exactly for that. When we return, the same week we were supposed to return originally, we will be putting the vision of this government for a better, greener, stronger Canada to a vote in the House of Commons. That is democracy in action.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
I think it's important when a government moves in a new direction and introduces new measures that had not been planned for previously. 8 or 9 months ago, when we presented our throne speech for this parliamentary session, there was no mention of COVID-19, no mention of the need to rebuild the Canadian economy and help millions of Canadians. Of course, this is not a plan that can really apply now, and therefore the only responsible thing was to announce that we would present an ambitious plan for the future in Parliament, and Parliament will decide whether we can take action as a government to deliver for Canadians. In order to do that, of course, we had to use prorogation and introduce a new throne speech and test the confidence of Parliament in the government's vision. And I look forward to that discussion and debate.
Carla Olivera de Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada. I'd like you to comment on the events that occurred in Montreal over the weekend. John A. Macdonald's statue was torn down and spent the night on the ground. There have been reactions from the Mayor of Montreal and certain premiers across the country. I'd like to hear your response. What do you think of all of that and the debate around it? Well, first of all, I fully agree with the Mayor of Montreal, Ms. Plante, and Minister Stephen Guilbeault, who have been saying that vandalism is not an acceptable way to put forward the need for change in society. Now, I understand that there are people who are subject to systemic racism and discrimination here in Montreal and all across the country for many, many years, and I believe that we must seriously address this problem. At the same time, actions such as that have no place in a society that abides by the rule of law. We must understand and hear and understand the impatience of people who want to see more change happen more quickly to address that discrimination. But we have to do it the right way. And unfortunately, on both sides, there are people who are using this as a political argument. The right wants to use that for its ends, the left as well. So I think that the vast majority of Canadians absolutely want us to act in concrete ways to address this, but not using vandalism. And that's exactly what we hope to see, and we will be working together with others to make that happen.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Philippe Mercure du Journal La Presse.
Journal La Presse. Now, at the same time, you are being asked to expand Bill 101 to companies and institutions under federal jurisdiction. Will you be making an announcement on that? Well, we will always be here to defend the special place of the French language in Quebec and to defend both official languages, particularly in minority situations. We've always been open to discussions with Canadians about the best way to do that, and our reflection will continue.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Justin Lang, freelance. I'm curious to hear you respond to the lobbying commissioner reviewing communications between MCAP Vice President Rob Silver and your government. Does it worry you at all that nobody in your government thought to report these communications to the commissioner, considering this seems to be what the Lobbying Act was created for, to prevent well-connected people from lobbying for specific changes to legislation from your government, in this case the wage subsidy? Does that concern you at all?
I can assure Canadians in this case that all the rules were followed. I have full confidence in my Chief of Staff, who ensured that not only did she consult extensively with the Ethics Commissioner before her husband took a role in the private sector, she went above and beyond in bringing in ethical screens to ensure that there were no improprieties. For your other questions, those are questions better suited to the company in question.
Merci.
I want to just take back my repeat my answer on the John A. Macdonald statue in English. Like the Mayor of Montreal, like Minister Stephen Guilbeault, our Minister of Heritage, I was deeply disappointed by the vandalism that took place over the weekend. I understand the impatience, the frustration of Canadians who faced systemic discrimination and racism throughout their lives, and their concern that we act quickly on that, and their impatience, because I myself am impatient. We need to move forward quickly and in the right ways on countering systemic discrimination, and our government will do just that. But we are a country of laws, and we are a country that needs to respect those laws, even as we seek to improve and change them. And those kinds of acts of vandalism are not advancing the path towards greater justice and equality in this country. Now, we've seen, following that, people on either sides of the spectrum trying to use these elements as a way of furthering debates. I'm more interested in using the real frustrations that people have as motivations to continue to make the big changes necessary. We have an awful lot to do as a country, and part of it needs to have a clear eye towards the past and mistakes made by previous generations of people who built this country. But our focus needs to be on how we improve things today and for the days to come for all Canadians. And that means tackling systemic discrimination everywhere it exists, taking significant measures to make sure that Canadians are safe and aren't facing extra barriers that are inherently unfair. We have a lot of work to do, but choices like this, to rely on vandalism to advance causes, is not going to help anyone move forward the right way.
Merci. On va terminer avec les journalistes au téléphone. Une question, un suivi. Opérateur, c'est à vous.
Thank you. Merci. Première question, Raymond Filion, TVA. À vous.
Thank you. Good morning, Prime Minister. Just coming back to the statue, do you believe that monuments in the honor of John A. Macdonald should remain in place given certain decisions made in the past? Well, he was our first Prime Minister, and I think it's important to recognize the role he played in the creation of this country and compared to the world we live in now. But at the same time, we must acknowledge that where there were comments or perspectives or certain actions that were unacceptable, well, I mean, that's part of recognizing our history as a country. And I'm thinking of the various communities, and it's up to them to decide how we will remember certain events in our history. But it's not up to a small group of people to decide unilaterally that we must not recognize or celebrate that particular figure in our history. We need people to be informed, and we have to have difficult discussions about how we can recognize figures of the past and recognize their mistakes at the same time as we move forward. But we have systems, we have elected officials that can reflect those decisions and those perspectives on the part of our citizens, but it's not up to citizens to decide to take this type of action. Follow-up, Raymond? Yes. With respect to vaccines, 88 million doses of vaccine, that is what you said earlier. I'm wondering whether this will be enough when we know that people need more than one dose of a vaccine. Are you sure that there will be enough to immunize everyone in Canada? And once the vaccine is available, will immunization be mandatory? Now, obviously, we have been dealing with a group of experts who are looking at all of those questions through various partnerships and the agreements we announced today. There are some that think only one dose will be necessary. In other cases, they think there may be several doses needed. And so we are looking at all those potential needs as we try to conclude these agreements to secure vaccine. But as I say, we are looking at agreements with many different companies because we really don't know where the ultimate vaccine will come from, who will develop it first. And we need to have the ability to immunize Canadians, as many Canadians as possible. We are 36 million Canadians in this country, and we ultimately need to have access to enough vaccine for the vast majority of the population. Now, with respect to decisions or requirements for vaccination, we have experts that will be advising us on that. We're not at that point yet.
Opérateur, prochaine question au téléphone.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Hélène Buzetti, Le Devoir. À vous.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Trudeau. I would also like to come back to the issue of the McDonald's statue. You said we have to reflect as to what the right way would be to do things. Now, are you thinking of a particular solution? And Mr. McDonald is being attacked, but we can also think of other ministers such as Laurier or Pearson, who may not have introduced residential schools, but they didn't abolish them either. Yes, I think we can ask about my own father, if it goes that far, and ask questions about just about all of our former prime ministers and our past leaders, who probably did a lot of good things, but also made some mistakes. So I think that any country has to be informed about its past and realize the positive things that were done, but also the other things that may be done by a leader and the impact that those actions can have on others. So I think we have to have a mature conversation among Canadians as to how we can educate, inform, and remember what happened before us and what the people who came before us have done. But at the same time, we have to be focused on how we can improve our society today and in the coming months and years. And I think that starting divisive discussion on people unilaterally toppling statues is not the right way to move forward as a society. And on that same topic, earlier, you said that the right and the left are both using that issue for political ends. Now, could you be more specific about that? Well, I think that we're seeing on the extreme right that they're trying to start wars and divide Canadians on issues such as that. And I think we have to recognize that John A. Macdonald did some very positive things in creating the Canada of today, but he also was a part of his history, and some of his comments and actions should be looked at much more critically. It's important to understand the impact on our institutions. I think systemic racism is all about that. The fact that institutions were created with that had that kind of racism ingrained in themselves, and that they continued to discriminate about certain people. And I think there needs to be reflection. I think there needs to be engagement with others responsibly, engagement responsibly with all governments and Canadians, so that we can develop the right approach. I don't think oversimplification is the right approach, and creating disappointment and outrage on one side of the political divide or other is not the way to move forward responsibly as a country where people learn from each other.
Opérateur, on va prendre la dernière question au téléphone.
Thank you. Merci. Last question, Mike Lecouteur, Global National.
Prime Minister, thanks for taking our questions. The first question I have for you on vaccines, you even said yourself that specialists say that this process often takes years. Given how the process for developing these vaccines has been sped out, how concerned are you that Canadians will be hesitant to get vaccinated because of the perceptions that this vaccine may have been rushed?
We have been challenged over the past many months on questions exactly like that. Questions around testing, for example, where Health Canada is being encouraged to approve far more tests than they would feel comfortable with, or move forward more quickly on certain tests than they feel comfortable with. Every step of the way, we're ensuring that the safety of Canadians is foremost. We will not see testing protocols approved until they are safe for Canadians. We will not move forward on a vaccine until we are confident that it is safe for Canadians. Other countries will make their own decisions and have already in regards to testing. Canada will always put the safety of Canadians first and foremost. And that's as true on vaccines as on everything else. We will do the necessary work so that if Canada moves forward on a vaccine and on a vaccination program, Canadians can have full confidence in their own safety as we do that.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
Je pense qu'à chaque étape, les
I think
Canadiens
at
ont vu
every
que
step,
la
Canadians have
sécurité, la
seen
santé des
that
Canadiens
the safety and
est toujours
health of
notre
Canadians
priorité.
is always our
On s'est fait
priority.
critiquer d'avoir
We
été
were
un peu plus
criticized
attentionné que
for
d'autres pays
paying
par
more
rapport
attention than other countries
au processus
to
d'approuver
the
des
process
tests de
of
dépistage.
approving
Mais
testing
on
kits.
voulait à
But the
chaque
fact is that
étape
at every
s'assurer
step of the
qu'on
way,
fasse
we
les
wanted
bonnes
to
choses
ensure that
de
we
la
were
bonne
doing the
façon
right
pour
thing
protéger les
the right
Canadiens.
way in order to
Les
protect
Canadiens peuvent être
Canadians.
confiants que
Canadians can
quand
be
viendra le
confident
moment
that
d'approuver
when
un
it comes
vaccin
time to
et
approve
de
a
donner aux
vaccine
Canadiens,
and to provide it to
on va
Canadians,
avoir,
we
fait tout le
will
travail
have done
nécessaire
all the necessary
pour
work
s'assurer
to
que
ensure
c'est,
that
un vaccin
that
sécuritaire pour les
vaccine
Canadiens.
is safe for Canadians.
And just as a follow-up on the Cameron Ortis case, a lawsuit alleges failure by top-level RCMP for ignoring warnings about Cameron Ortis for 2 years before he was arrested. I wanted to know, are you taking any action on this? And also, what is your government doing to address concerns that Canada's trust with Five Eyes allies may have been eroded due to this Cameron Ortis case?
Obviously, we take these reports extremely seriously, and I can assure you that Minister Blair is following up on them and looking into what may have happened around this case. Secondly, I can tell you that we took immediate action when this situation came to light to communicate with our allies, to reassure them, to inform them of what was potentially compromised, and to ensure that we continue to maintain their trust, which we have.
Merci beaucoup. C'est ce qui m'a fait à la conférence de presse aujourd'hui.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.